All right, school is in session, so take your seats and turn up the volume. It's time for the smartest fishing show on the internet. This is the show that dives into everything fishing, from tactics and gear to policy and product. Here he is, the fishing professor, Professor Sid Dobrin. So stick around, you might learn something.
Ball with the ball, da bang, diggy, 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 said the boogie, said up, drop the boogie. Ball with the ball, da bang, diggy, 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 said the boogie, said up, drop the boogie. My name is Sid Rock. Well, welcome to the Fishing Professor Rodcast. Actually, my name is Sid Dobrin, the Fishing Professor, and we have got a rockin' good show for you today because we have got in the inshore offshore digital studio John Driskell Hopkins, the Hop, the bassist for the Zac Brown Band. That's right, we're going musical today. Hey, and in addition to a great conversation with that double bass thumping all-star, we're going to keep the music alive as I review Blackened, that great blended whiskey collaboration between master distiller and blender Dave Pickerell and Metallica, that innovative chart-topping hard-rockin' metal band. And after we get in tune with all of that, I'm going to count down my top 10 scent additives. Ooh, that smell. Can't you smell that smell? The smell that gets around you. Hey, as always, be sure to subscribe to the Rodcast by clicking that subscribe button on whatever platform you're using to access the Rodcast. And please let all of your friends, family, and bandmates know about the Rodcast. For the time bombs ticking in the heads to hang, all the gangs getting money in the heads they bang, wild Mustangs, the porno flicks, and all my homies in cell block 6, the grits when there ain't enough eggs to cook, and for D.B. Cooper and the money he took. You can look for answers, but that ain't fun. Now get in the pit and try to love someone. Hey, welcome to the Red Rodcast. Let's get casting. All right, my listening crew, we have got a fantastic conversation headed your way today because in the inshore offshore digital studio, we have got the world-renowned recording artist John Driskell Hopkins, one of the founding members of the Zac Brown Band, one of the all-time greatest country bands with 16 singles on the Billboard Hot Country Songs or Country Airplay chart, of which 13 have reached number 1. Their first album, The Foundation, which is so fantastic, is certified triple platinum by the Recording Industry Association of America. And their albums, You Get What You Give and Uncaged, are certified platinum. The Zac Brown Band has been nominated for 9 Grammys over the years and have taken home 3. Now, I just referred to the Zac Brown Band as a country band, but here's the thing. That is such an understatement of the range of the band. And for those of us of the coastal persuasion, we know Zac Brown Band is turning out some of the best beach vibe sounds, placing themselves right alongside Jimmy Buffett and Kenny Chesney as core to the American seaside, lakeside, and riverside way of life. And John Driskell Hopkins has been there from the outset. But I got to point out that his own range of musical expertise stretches way beyond the countryside of life. This is a guy whose musical semblance is embodied in country, bluegrass, the blues, and a range of rock and roll, and his solo albums and other musical accomplishments are outstanding. In the 1990s, when Zac Brown Band was skyrocketing in popularity, Driscoll formed his own rock band, Brighter Shade, and released 2 albums. He also played with the bluegrass group Balsam Range, which released 1 album. And in 2019, Hopkins became a national trustee for the Recording Academy. Now, like his partner in musical crime, Zac Brown, John Driskell Hopkins grew up on the banks of Lake Lanier in Gainesville, Georgia, the poultry capital of the world. But we're not talking turkey today because that lake water must have been as full of musical vibes as it's filled with spotted bass, striped bass, largemouth bass, and even a walleye or 2, I hear. In fact, Lake Lanier really has become the premier spotted bass fishery in the country. But given the Zac Brown Band aquatic vibe, we can't discount Lanier's musical influence either. And because life is good today, we're going to talk about fishing and music with one of the upper echelon of American music, Mr. John Driskell Hopkins, the Hop. I almost want to do that Kermit the Frog, wave your hands in the air, excited Muppet Show intro kind of thing. But hey, John Driskell Hopkins, Hop, if I may, thank you so much for being on the Rodcast.
I'm very excited to be here, and thank you for having me. I love the Kermit the Frog flailing arms. I think it's perfect.
That's excellent.
And we got to incorporate the old men whenever we do something we don't like.
Absolutely.
The old hecklers. Yeah.
Absolutely. Got to heckle. All right. So let's start where we usually start on the show with some origin story stuff. And let me ask you about your early days in Georgia and how fishing and water and the outdoors was part of your childhood.
Well, we grew up right next to Lake Lanier, and in the mid 80s, my dad bought a used Galaxy ski boat with a 165 Mer Cruiser on the back. And when I was working in the stock room at Belk the summer of my 16th year, every day that I was able, I would take the boat out and ski. As a fisherman, I'm a really good singer, but I used to be a pretty damn good wakeboarder, and knee boards seemed to have just come out then. We had a hydro slide, and I just have always been very water centric. I'm a competitive swimmer, I'm not anymore, but I used to be a competitive swimmer. With pretty fast times in the 50 and the 100 freestyle. And so the lake and the ocean and the pool and all things water have always been a really big part of my life. I used to fish a little bit with my friends just in the ponds and a little bit in Lanier, and we'd pull up some crappie or some catfish or some carp once in a while. But it was more for us to hang out and enjoy the outdoors than it was to go after big trophy fish. But I do appreciate the art, and I'm just not very good at it.
Man, you mentioned the hydro slide. You remember that original yellow hydro slide?
That's the one.
Yeah,
that's the one I had.
Yeah, I used to love doing that. We have very similar backgrounds in that. I was also a swimmer and spent a lot of time hydro sliding. So I love that.
The knee pad was like half an inch thick. It was terrible. And then they improved it with the hydro slide 2, and the knee pad came out stronger. And those were a lot. I mean, those are the precursors to a lot of the wakeboarding stuff that's going on now.
Yeah, we've spent a lot of time on the lake doing a lot of hydro sliding, a lot of wakeboarding, just great fun. So let me expand that just a little bit. So that's your childhood. You've also got daughters, and there's been a lot of talk in recent years about encouraging young women to take up those kinds of outdoors activities. How has being around the lake and your influence as a kid around water, how has that affected how you and your family, your daughters, your wife have approached teaching your daughters about the outdoors?
Well, on Sunday, we're going to raft the Chattahoochee. We live with the Chattahoochee right in our backyard. I wish we had frontage, but we can see it from the house. And so we've done that every year. The girls love to get out on kayaks on the lake. We were just up at a friend's house in Blue Ridge, and they kayaked the entire time. We're very familiar with all of the Ritz-Carlton / Reynolds Plantation, Lake Oconee area, and we always get in the lake over there. I think my girls are really strong swimmers, and they love water sports. They're not competitive swimmers, maybe the way you and I were, but they have been on some summer leagues. They're into some other things too, and but they love the water, and that's generally a big part of whatever we're planning. If we're going to go do a weekend somewhere, it's generally with water included.
Man, the Chattahoochee in July, it's That's right at the song, right? Way down upon the Chattahoochee.
Right.
It's hotter than a hoochie coochie. I mean, it's going to be cooking out there, man.
Yeah, the river stays pretty cold because it comes right out of the bottom of Lanier. So the Buford Dam, lets out the coldest of that, and then it runs down to Morgan Falls where my neighborhood is, and then so we've got a pretty good stretch of that that's really calm. And then there's one or two little spots where they're not rapids, but they're bumps. And when the girls were small, we were like, here they come! Oh my God! Like freaking out, and they would get really excited about it. But they're just gentle little rock rapids. They're not rapids at all.
It sounds so much fun.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk music, since that's really what we got to talk about. We want to talk about some Zac Brown Band stuff and also your solo stuff. Now, clearly, part of the ambiance of the Zac Brown Band's ethos is that waterside vibe, that toes in the sand, drink in the hand kind of vibe, if we're quoting Van Halen, or if we want to stick to the Zac Brown Band quote, that infamous line, I got my toes in the water, my ass in the sand, a vibe, I might add, that is so magnificently depicted in the opening scene of the music video for Toes, a piece that you co-wrote with Zac Brown, Wyatt Durrett, and Sean Mullins, and of course, the legend of Floody Boatwood. How did that watery tactility emerge as a kind of theme or personality over the years with Zac Brown Band?
Well, Zac grew up in Dahlonega. It's 20 minutes from where I grew up in Gainesville, and we were both very close to Lake Lanier. At one point, his family lived in Cumming, which was on Lake Lanier, and I think everybody in North Georgia has a choice, really, of several different lakes, and that one in the northeast corner was ours. And it's just a part of our lives, sitting in lawn chairs, beer or no beer, just watching the sunset, being with family, having a picnic, being able to go out on a boat if you're so lucky to have that opportunity. But even if you're not, the national parks, for several years in a row, my family has gone up to Laurel Park just to watch the fireworks. And it's a massive group of humanity there to enjoy the water together and, celebrate the 4th. So it's a part of our community. And we're very fortunate to have such a popular, wonderful lake up there. And I think that's how it gets so easily infiltrated into the music, is that we write about what we know. And while Toes is a fun-loving tune, it applies to all sorts of people all over the world, and it's more specifically about beach with ass in the sand. But there are some freshwater beaches around Lanier as well. So it really applies to wherever you've got an embankment to go be with friends.
Bikinis and palm trees, man. That's a rhyme that Jimmy Buffett must have been swooning over. Is that your couplet or one of the other writers?
I'm responsible for a lot of the arrangement and for the toes in the clay at the end there. I said, we got to bring it back home. We got to get to the lake because we spent all our money, and this is where we're going to be now. So,
oh, that's excellent. All right, so let's talk about that atmosphere that you just described, that Zac Brown Band water vibe, and let me ask you, what is it about that feeling that has become such a huge part of Americana and Americana music? That is, why do we get so happy and relaxed when music gets us wanting to be in the sun and the sand and the clay?
I think it's just vacation time. I think it's a time when you know that you can put aside the stress of everyday life and just go enjoy, whether you're by yourself or with friends or family. Something about being out on the water means we're not working right now. We're not worried right now, and there's a real peace to that. And not only that, but just the sound of water. The lapping of the waves against a boat dock, or the crashing of the waves in the ocean. I mean, both are totally cathartic moments in our lives, and I think when you have music that goes along with that reminds you of that, knee deep in the water, jump right in. I want to be a castaway. It's this wonderful opportunity to live in this fantasy world that just brings us joy, I think.
I like that comparison of the sound of the water to the lyrical sound of the music too. I mean, there is that sense in a lot of your songs, that fluidity to the tune as well.
Yeah, and that's a goal. That's no mistake. We're trying to make it feel that way. And those of us who grew up listening to reggae at the beach and Buffett at the beach and things like that, we're borrowing from all of those things, and it really putting our own spin on it. It really we hope to add to those traditional songs that have shaped the way that people enjoy the water.
All right. So with that in mind, talk to me about how important the release of Same Boat was at the time it came out in June of 21.
That might be the most poignant one, because it really it was a way, and I didn't write that one, but I'm very proud of it, and I think Zac really nailed it with the opportunity to say we're all in this world together as one people, and then to also have an opportunity to add to our water collection, and that's another wonderful tie-in to humanity, because everybody, all walks of life, love some form of water in their life, and we can all relate to that. So no matter what your background or your musical tastes, if you're on the water and you hear Same Boat and you're paying attention to the lyrics, then hopefully you get a sense of, yeah, we're in this together. This is one world, one humanity, and we're all trying to make our way.
All right. So in that song, the lines, "We're all in the same boat, fishing in the same holes," really stands out, not just as a metaphoric commentary like you're talking about on the situation in which we found ourselves during the pandemic, but that metaphor relied on a kind of common understanding of what it means to fish in the same hole. So since the Rodcast does have a focus on fishing and water culture, let me ask you, why is it that music, country music and bluegrass in particular, finds so much rich material in fishing?
I think it's readily available, and I think that as far as it's a sport that everyone can get into. You can just get a stick and a rope and fish. I mean, even if you don't have means, if you save up for a nice rod, you're good. You're golden. You don't have to have the big boat or the beach house or even the dock. You can just go anywhere with a license, I guess, and anyone can be a part of it. And the few fishing opportunities that I've had from my childhood, the best ones were those when my friend would say, "Let's go fishing." And I would say, "Okay, I think my dad's got a rod," and I would go get it, and we would go and get worms, and he and I would work on the casting and the bait, and there was nothing fancy about it. This wasn't a deep sea trip. This was just walking around the perimeter of the lake or the pond and enjoying friendship. And I think that is part of why it's so popular, is because it's so accessible. Anyone can jump in there and fish.
I love that answer. And, given the role that fishing has played, not just in American music, but globally in all kinds of music, ranging from sea shanties to place-based music all over the world, I want to ask you about some specific fishing songs and get your take on them. So we're going to take a moment and we're going to play a speed round. I'm going to give you the name of about 10 artists and songs, And after each one, I want to hear your thoughts, a kind of mini review. And of course, if you have juicy gossip about any of the artists, I'll take that too. It'll boost my ratings.
All right.
But and of course, there are so many more songs that I could throw at you, as fishing is such a core trope and metaphor in country and Americana music, and to an extent rock. But for the sake of time, I'm going to keep this to about 10. And these are all pretty well-known songs. But if I name a song which you aren't familiar with, just take a pass. We'll let it slide. We'll chalk it up to the fact that you went to FSU, so there are inevitably gaps in your education. All right, you ready? The John Driskell Hopkins fishing song speed round. Number 1, the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band's Fishing in the Dark.
Oh, yeah.
That's the perfect response. You don't even need to say anything else.
Are you gonna play the song?
No, I can't do that because of copyright.
Oh, yeah. You and me going fishing in the dark. Yeah, I mean, what a great melody. And the pulse of that song is just boom, 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 boom. It's almost reggae in the country world. And it's all about falling in love, you know. It's not about fishing, obviously. Right. They're in the dark. But lyrically, it might even be an excuse to get your girl out there and in the lake area. Feels so good to be with you. You know, I love that song.
Yeah, fantastic song. All right, number 2, Brad Paisley's "I'm Gonna Miss Her," the fishing song.
I'm vaguely familiar with this song and more familiar with more of Brad's work. But I remember the premise being she wanted me to give up fishing, so I'm going to miss her.
Right.
And he's a funny guy. I mean, he's written all kinds of clever, wonderful anecdotes that I think are brilliant, you know, and this is another one. I mean, fishing was more important than she.
All right, so number 3, I'm making an assumption about your musical past. So how about Woody Guthrie's "Talkin' Fishing Blues"?
Don't know it.
All right, we'll pass on that. How about Justin Moore's "Beta Hook"?
Vaguely.
That's the one where the girl's dating the rich and fancy guy, and he keeps coming back to the refrain. I bet he doesn't even know how to bait a hook.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. Someone's baiting his hooks for him.
Right. All right. How about Trace Adkins, "Just Fishing," or "Mind on Fishing," or anything Trace Adkins?
I like Trace Adkins. I don't know his fishing material. I think Trace has one of the most amazing voices in country music, and we actually got the chance to play with him. We opened for him in North Carolina early on an Alan Jackson tour. So it was us, and then Trace, and then Alan, and amazing talent.
That's a lineup for a show. I'd love to see that.
It was cool, and it could have been South Carolina. It might have been Greenville, but it was very early on. It was probably 2006, something like that.
You know, Maddie and Tay's "Shut Up and Fish"?
No.
Beautiful song. All right, Luke Bryan's "Bill Dance" song.
What's it called?
It's called the Bill Dance Song by Luke Bryan. It's a tribute to how he learned to fish from Bill Dance on TV.
No, I don't know that one either.
All right,
sorry,
so, no, it's all good. It's all good. All right, so 3 more, and these are 3 of my all-time favorites. So I'm hoping we're on the same page, and I'm going to get heartbroken when you tell me you don't know these songs.
Okay.
All right, what about John Prine's "Fish and Whistle"?
No.
Now we're gonna have to rethink your education, man.
Oh, I'm gonna need this entire list, and I promise I will listen to it.
How about Taj Mahal's iconic "Fishing Blues"?
No.
Bet you going fishing all of the time, baby, going fishing too. Nope. All right. How about Robert Earl Keen's "5-Pound Bass"?
No.
Nope. All right, man. We'll pass on that, because otherwise I'm going to go to Leonard Skinner's "Gone Fishing," but we'll keep Skinner out of it from now. You know, I was tempted also to ask you, because you're a bassist, about your thoughts on Les Claypool's Fisherman's Chronicles on the Primus albums, but that would take us down a bass and bass kind of path. And I would have to end up boasting about my oldest boy, who begins study at the bass studio in the College of Music at the University of Colorado in Boulder this fall. So we'll leave that open for other conversations, but we are bass fans.
Very exciting. Yeah. I mean,
He is a fantastic musician and a phenomenal composer. But let's go back to you and your music then for a minute. All right. So back in 2019, you and 4 other guys formed a heavier rock band that you called the Heavy Wolves of Venice. And you released a 5-song EP, the Revelation EP, which was featured in the 2018 film Adolescence. And that's a movie that you also had a role in as Spider. And man, Tommy Flanagan in that movie singing Lou Reed. I loved that guy before, but hell, starting to belt out Lou Reed, and I'm sold. And Ken Hudson Campbell, Max from Armageddon, just wow, fantastic movie. I love that movie. And it's got a fishing connection too, because there's a very brief discussion of the old man in the sea in that. But before I geek out on my love of film and start preaching about Mickey River and India Isley in that film, talk to me about your shift from country, blues, bluegrass, Americana to that heavier rock that was on that EP, and even that song you and the band rip out in that movie.
We, that's where I started. I started in when I was at Florida State. I was in a cover band that became a pretty heavy alternative band, and we were big fans of Soundgarden and Metallica and Pearl Jam and these Nirvana, these bands that were making massive waves in the scene back then, and that was from listening to things like Guns N' Roses and Queensryche, and I mean these really aggressive, heavy bands. And I'm still a big fan of hard rock, of aggressive songwriting and aggressive rock and roll. And Brighter Shade had a lot of that. So my 2 albums that I did before I got in Zac Brown Band, if you go back and check out a few tracks like Breakdown or I'm Your Only Option, they're just really aggressive tunes. And I love that. I love the opportunity to scream at the world when I'm frustrated. And I haven't been able to do that in that way for a long time until the Bloody Wolves of Venice showed up. And I'm actually talking to the guys about doing another Bloody Wolves of Venice EP that's directed at ALS, actually. And the anger and the frustration of all of that seems to lend itself to screaming at the world. And so it's always been a part of my writing, and I've just never had a consistent vehicle with which to put it out there. But the Bloody Wolves have emerged as a group that's happy to get together and collaborate and make big rock sounds and big noise and really throw down some aggression. So I think that's cathartic as well. I think that it helps me deal with stress, and I've got a lot of singer-songwriter stuff where I can talk about family and the upside, but that's not a full picture of the life experience. We've got some other things that probably need to be expressed, and I'm not a political guy, but I know that there are so many things wrong with our world, and trying to remember the name of the song. It's a Bloody Wolves track where I'm just ranting about all the things that are wrong with our perception of each other, and what I would do if I were the man upstairs, the man in charge, and the decision is to just wipe it out and start over. It's kind of an aggressive thought process, and of course it's fantasy, but I have these moments, and I owe it to myself to put them to music and to share them. just in case they help someone else deal with emotional distress, or maybe maybe getting these thoughts out will brighten my day or someone else's day. So.
Yeah, and it's interesting how much of a resurgence that kind of music is making, particularly those 80s bands. This summer I went to Welcome to Rockville. We had Dale Stewart from Seether on this show,
Right.
the bassist from Seether, and 4 days of all those bands you just mentioned. And then I got to go to the stadium tour to see Motley Crue, Def Leppard, Joan Jett. So there is that sense of we want to be able to scream a lot right now, particularly after these last couple of years and everything that's been going on. So I really get and dig what you're saying about having that kind of sound to help guide us through that kind of anger. All right, so I want to get a Fishing Professor Rodcast exclusive, and I want to see if I can get you to sing for me that fantastic that song that Spider sings in adolescence, sitting at the party, a song I believe that can only be called Babe.
Yeah. Well, we were sitting there, and Ashley Avis was sort of directing a new family moment here as we were all getting to know each other in the cast. And she was like, "John, just play and, sing whatever comes to your head." And I'm just kind of chopping around, and I'm like, "Baby," and baby, and it became this moment. And the other guys in the cast started jumping in and enjoying it. And when I took it home, after the shoot, I thought, I just need to take that and make that a chorus. And I actually wrote the rest of it based on the script. So that I never thought that I could love another person like I love you, but you show me how my heart works. I can't let you go, baby, baby. Like that was this, the two main characters, trying to figure out how they were falling in love. And you might be crazy or it might be me, but I don't ever want to let you down or take love from you. I just thought you'd want to know, baby, baby. So that's kind of how that became a song. And it's my favorite one on that EP. It's a lot of fun, and it just feels good to hit those chords, so.
Well, it's that great moment where in that familial moment where you're, you hit the chords, you baby, and everybody's looking at you, and you just kind of pause and go, it's a work in progress. Yeah. It was just a fantastic moment.
Yeah. Ashley's really good at getting those honest moments and letting things like that happen and then using them. She's actually the director of Disney's latest Black Beauty, and is in charge of my documentary that I'm doing. So we've stayed connected over the years, and she's jumping right in here with me to document my journey.
So we're going to come back to that, but you've appeared in a couple of other movies, and you've got a new movie coming out, Breakwater, in which you play a sea captain. And I know that you majored in general theater while you were at FSU. So I assume acting's been part of the overall artistic performance mindset you've had for a while. So are movies something you like doing?
I tell people that I've been acting like a musician for a long time. I think that my take on showmanship is probably what has led to a lot of my success with my friends and with the audience. I really love to ham it up, and that's a big part of being on stage as an actor. I've done a few movies, but growing up throughout high school and into college, I was on a lot of stages for plays, and strangely enough, when Zac needed a bass player in 2005, I was cast in a play called Lost Highway, which was about the life of Hank Williams Sr. And I had lines, and we sang 23 Hank Williams songs, and I played the upright bass. So I was cast as the bass player in Hank's band. And I told Zac when he said, keep your eye out, I need a bass player. And I was like, well, I'll come out there and hang out. He was playing all the same bars I was playing. Nobody was famous yet. And I said, I'd love to come play with you. And I've been playing a lot of bass recently. And so that theater performance prepped me for a lot of this upright bass playing that transitioned into me joining Zac Brown Band. So theater has always been hand in hand with what I do. The Breakwater movie, this is actually another film that has a lot of the same folks that are involved in the Adolescence movie. Ed Winters is Ashley's husband, and he's producing this movie. And I've found a real good family with them. And I tell them all the time, because my schedule is so crazy, I tell them, okay, kill me in a bar. Just give me like 2 lines where I'm like, you son of a, and like, just, I've got the gun and I'm firing off into the mob, and then somebody blows me away. So it takes like, 2 days out of my life, and I get to be in the movie. Just kill me in a bar, however which way you want. That's kind of the most that I can put towards film and acting right now is cameos and little moments. Otherwise, I'm trying to do music videos, which often turn into little movies as well. So.
Well, that's an interesting point, because what you're saying makes me think about the importance of music videos and what you've accomplished with Zac Brown Band and as a solo artist, because clearly the videos for Toes, Knee Deep, Chicken Fried, and so many of the other hits had an impact on how audience connects with those songs. As both a musician and as an actor, how do you think about that relationship between the musical and the visual?
It's a visual world that we live in. And, even if you've got a song out and you just walk around a field and sing it to a camera, and that's your whole video, people are more inclined to listen if they're seeing something. And it plays a big part in the way music is presented. It's so important for you to have a certain look. When I'm really trying to stick the aggressive songs out there, I always shave out the middle of my beard and try to look different and maybe more recognizable. I've got lots of amazing hats that I wear. It's all visual. I tell people the more hair I lose, the more hats I buy. So it's like I can't be Greg Allman with the long blonde hair, but I can present something that's interesting visually, and I think that people are prone to listen more when they're visually entertained.
So given that, talk to me about the incredible visual aesthetic of the video for your ballad, I Hate to See Good Whiskey Go to Waste, which is the 4th track on your most recent solo album, Lonesome High, because that's a beautiful video.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Chuck and Andrew really came around with helping me put that song to life. And it was a tune that I wrote with Jerry Salley, who's a dear friend, and he's in the bluegrass world. And we started the story in my studio, and then just took it into a local bar nearby in Roswell, and we were able to secure the bar for the morning into the afternoon before they opened. But it was still during COVID, so we had to all have tests and masks, and the lead actor in that is Rob Lawhorn, who is one of my best friends from college, and he is you'll see him on lots of commercials, and he was in that Lost Highway play with me. He's all over the Atlanta acting scene. And then Katie Tebow, if you're a Gator fan, you know the Tebow family.
Oh yeah.
And Katie is a beautiful person, a beautiful woman, and a mom of three that is still out there rocking some great acting and modeling gigs. So this might have been one of her. She's got more modeling in her repertoire, but I think she did an amazing job. And Alex Guthrie of The Voice fame is in the bar with the girls when they're all partying in the second verse. And I had lots of friends come together and make that happen. And I just think it looks amazing. And it really, to the previous point, it really makes you listen and makes you understand what the song's about.
Yeah, I absolutely love that song. Love the video. I love the whole album. And I love how the album title, Lonesome High, echoes that great 1950 John Drew Barrymore Western, High Lonesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what I like most about this album is how the songs like I Hate to See Good Whiskey Go to Waste and 8-Track and Daddy's Cadillac, they really remind us stylistically of your Zac Brown Band roots. But then songs like Missing You All the Time, which is a tribute to your wife and your daughters, and then that fantastic bluesy Rebel, they don't let us forget about your individual talent beyond Zac Brown Band. And that's that fantastic collaboration. Oh, with Emily Salyers of the Indigo Girls on that opening track, Good Morning Believers. Man, the vocals on that are just magnificent. Could you talk a little bit more about Lonesome High and what you really accomplished with that album?
Well, it's interesting that you talked about High Lonesome, because it's very common for bluegrassers to talk about that high lonesome sound. And that's where I was hearing it most. And I think that is something to quickly describe bluegrass to people who don't know bluegrass, and that whining sort of wailing yodel, and a lot of treble in the instruments, and then a lot of songs about heartbreak. And so I liked the idea of flipping that to Lonesome High. And to me, in my life, Lonesome High is today. I'm in Asbury Park. I'm about to go play a really cool show for a lot of really cool people, and my girls are at home. So I've got this high, I've got this great opportunity and this great professional life, and I don't get to share it with them as often as I would like. So it's very similar in theme to Missing You All the Time, but it's a different take on it. And that title track, Coy just did an amazing job on the slide guitar. The features on that, I mean, you may not know how in love I am with the Indigo Girls, but they're one of the reasons that I write music. And both Amy and Emily have become friends, and I cherish that. I mean, it's really a moment where I think, my God, I really have made it. I know the Indigo Girls, and to me, that's just a really personal connection. And Emily was a part of the writing on Good Morning Believers, and I'm still looking to do something like that with Amy. I'm just trying to figure out what we can put together. But my largest contribution to Zac Brown Band is the harmony and the stacks and the vocals, a lyric here or two. We've got lots of great lyricists in this band, but Emily's, to me, the pinnacle. Like she and Amy are the gods of folk and of singer-songwriter and of acoustic music. And of harmony, and just an honor to have her on this track. They were on my Christmas record together as Indigo Girls in the Spirit, and they sang "Do You Hear What I Hear," which is not about music so much, but I loved that title was their song, because I think I do hear what they hear, and so it was a bit of a flip there. But yeah, I mean that song is actually going to be, until we come up with something that might be a little more on the nose, that's going to be the unofficial or official theme song for my 501c3. So.
Okay, I'll be paying attention to that. As soon as you mentioned that about bluegrass and Lonesome High and all that, it immediately brings back, because I'm placing that term, with Earl Scruggs and Bill Monroe and Ralph Stanley, those
Totally.
Yeah, they were all that Lonesome High sound, or Lester Flatt, or all those guys. So
yeah.
And I had mentioned Robert O'Keefe earlier, and he uses that phrase when talking about Bill Monroe. And great stuff. Great stuff. Hey, on the Rodcast, we've got a segment I do each week called the Bourbon Break, in which I review bourbons for anglers. And clearly not just I hate to see good whiskey go to waste or whiskey's gone, but also given a little inside knowledge I have, I know that you're a whiskey fan. So like we discussed about fishing and music, talk to me about why whiskey is such a prevalent trope. I mean, you set the video in a bar, and it's a beautiful bar, and they're alive. I kept pausing the video to look at what whiskeys were on the shelf back there.
Yeah, they had a lot of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty impressive collection. Tell me why whiskey is such a prevalent trope in American music. I mean, whiskey and fishing are right there alongside mom and apple pie. And now that I've said that, man, I'm craving a good old bourbon apple pie, but never an apple pie flavored bourbon. So what's the whiskey music connection?
Well, I'm a big fan of Kentucky bourbon, and have been for many years. I think I'd started drinking, in college, the Jim Beam and Coke, that kind of thing. And then in my 20s, I just got rid of the Coke. I started adding water instead. And as an adult, where I really need to be more aware of my intake, it's great. It's a great way to measure, your evening. It's like sometimes a beer or your glass of wine, you might misjudge how much that is based on the pour, but it's pretty easy to know what 2 ounces is going to be like, and so that's not in any way saying that drinking whiskey is more responsible than something else. But I think it's because it's for those of us with the palate for something that's strong like that have decidedly been able to add it to fishing trips and boating events, and you can just bring a little flask, and you don't have to bring a cooler. I mean, it's convenient, and I think it tastes good. You don't get the carbonation. I've got a lot of reasons why I choose it over other alcohols, but it's mainly because I'm just a fan of the oak and the way it tastes.
So what are your favorites these days?
My go-to, because it's always available and it's always amazing, is Woodford Reserve. Some of the ones that I can't always find in the bar or the restaurant, like Angel's Envy is another big favorite of mine.
Shows up in adolescence in every drinking scene.
Oh yeah, that's no mistake.
Yeah. Oh, I know it was product placement. I caught that.
Yeah, I've got friends at Angel's Envy, and I've got friends at Pappy Van Winkle, and those are really hard to come by and very expensive, but that's because they're the absolute best. That their 20-year is by far the most amazing bourbon that I've ever enjoyed. But I think, there are so many out there. I think people have borrowed from Woodford and from Pappy, and they're starting to learn how to age and treat whiskey to make it wonderful. There's a lot of great bourbon out there, and the more the merrier. It used to be that it was only allowed to be from Kentucky, and now there are bourbons all over the country and the world that they're following all the right steps, and they're making great product. So it's a brand new bourbon world.
Absolutely. And you mentioned
what's
Woodford.
your favorite?
Like you, I'm a big fan of Woodford. I've been drinking a lot of Walcott lately. I will always be a fan of George Stagg, of Blanton's, of the Van Winkle, like you talk about. I've been lately very interested in the bourbons that musicians are working with, like the Bob Dylan Heaven's Door, Metallica's Blackened. That relationship between musicians and whiskey intrigues me. But every week we try to do a different bourbon review here, and so the research has been really important. So.
Yeah. Well, we've had the Blackened, and it was very good. And I also, whenever I run across a bottle of Weller, I think that's an old name that people are borrowing from as well. But
and Old Rose, and Four Roses, which is really one of the few pre-Civil War distilled bourbons that we still have around. And so,
right.
And I know you like Bullet because I heard from my inside source, but let's put bourbon aside. I want to ask you one more music question before we get into our wrap-up stuff. And if I remember correctly, and this is a purely selfish question, back in 2013, Dave Grohl announced that he had produced an EP for Zac Brown Band. What's it like working with Grohl?
He's the coolest guy in music, period. He is. And the best compliment that Zac ever gave me was, he reminds me of all the dudes in your crew. Like all the guys that I run with are like Dave Grohl, down to earth, fun loving, talented, big hearts, big sense of humor, energetic. Just a joy to be around. And, he showed up to that session without ever hearing anything by Zac Brown. How do you manage that if you go to a beach or you go to Walmart or you go to, he's heard some stuff, but he didn't sit down and study it. He wanted to come in there fresh. And that first session was on a day when there was a shooting at ALX and the TSA. There was a shooting. And so they shut the airport down, and his flight was delayed. So he just got in his car and went to Burbank, and he was supposed to get there at like 2 or 3, and he showed up at 10. And we were all, in position, sitting there waiting for him to show up. We had already rehearsed these songs, and he runs into the control room, 6 hours later than he was supposed to be. And he's like, he hits the button. He's like, "Hey dudes, let's rock." And then we're like, okay. So, and we just started playing, and we got to know him a little bit over the next 3 hours. And we had a song down that we really liked. And it was like 1 o'clock, and he goes, "Hey dudes, let's drink." So we got to hang out with him and just chew the fat, which was incredible. He's just such a sweet guy.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I was really looking forward to seeing Foo Fighters this summer, and then of course with the passing of Taylor Hawkins, those shows got put on hold. So, Hop, this has been so much fun, and as much fun as I would have just sitting here all day talking music, movies, fishing, and of course not wasting good whiskey. I think before we get to the wrap up questions, we need to get serious for a bit, because you recently made a public announcement to your fans that you've been diagnosed with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. And since that announcement, you've become one of the most active and vocal advocates for supporting ALS research. Could you talk about how that diagnosis has impacted your life, and tell us about the foundation that you and your Zac Brown bandmates have established, Hop on a Cure?
I'm the newbie. I'm the new guy in this fight. And before I was diagnosed, I went down the path of what's wrong with me. Why is my balance off, and why is my speech slurring a bit? As a singer, that's one of the main things that I noticed. I should be rattling off lyrics and speech with ease, and it's been increasingly difficult. So I think I started noticing some symptoms in 2019 with my right hand not moving as quickly as I think it should on the guitar, and it has progressed very slowly since then. That's the good news. Slow progression is preferred. What we're trying to do is we're trying to raise awareness. I've told many people that I have ALS, and they kind of look at me blankly and say, "Oh man, that's tough," and they don't know what it is. In the 501c3 that we have established, what we're trying to do is generate awareness and let people know that ALS is a motor neuron disease that eventually leaves you with no control over your muscles. And that's arms, legs, mouth, throat, lungs, swallowing, breathing. So life expectancy is 3 to 5 years, and my progression being very slow, I could possibly have already been 3 years, and I'm still on tour. I'm still walking and talking and singing and playing. We are hopeful that we can continue to meet natural physicians, naturopathic physicians, along with the incredible doctors that we're seeing at Mass General and at Emory. And we're speaking to everybody who has an ALS clinic that's doing good work. And we're trying to find ways to slow and stop the degradation of motor neurons, and eventually reverse that. I'm not a scientist. I'm not someone that's going to be in there with the test tubes making all of these incredible discoveries, but hopefully I can provide some funding to add more brilliant minds and more people to the teams to make these discoveries and get these drugs out there. There's a bunch of new drugs out there that we are not allowed to use yet because we haven't been set up for clinical trials. So we're learning so much. And this is, I was diagnosed right before Christmas last year. So we're 7 months in, and we are doing the best that we can to raise money and find the organizations that are doing the best work to find a cure.
Well, and of course, there's no way for me to follow up on that. And from what I've garnered in our conversation today and what I've learned about you watching you speak about ALS in the media recently, my guess is you're not the kind of guy who's seeking empathy, but action and a path to a solution rather than pity from your audience. So I want to encourage all those in the listening crew to help support Hop on a Cure. And I guess I got to say, Hop, that makes it really tough for me to ask my final question, my usual wrap-up question. But maybe what you've just said about ALS and Hop on a Cure, the foundation that you've created, makes this final question kind of even more pertinent in that on the Rodcast, we're always talking about fishing and music and film and, whiskey. And I always ask at the end of the Rodcast, what's the grail fish? What's the bucket list fish out there you still want to get? But I assume that under the specter of ALS, it can be hard to think about a frivolity of catching a fish when the mindset necessarily has to be focused on the day-to-day struggle against ALS. But maybe it's specifically those kinds of moments, like having your ass in the sand and a rod in your hand, that makes that fight worth fighting, makes the living worth living. So if it's not too insensitive to ask, what's the John Driskell Hopkins grailfish? And that can be metaphoric, or to be optimistic, what are the next 30 or 40 years of grailfish for you?
There are a lot of people that think that ALS can be livable by 2030. There are a lot of people out there that are living with it far beyond when they were told that they would be living with it. There are, I've changed my diet. I'm on 40 supplements a day and all the medications that are accepted by the FDA to combat ALS. And I'm just hoping for a continued slow progression because I am capable of speaking about it freely and easily right now. I'd like to be able to continue to do that for as long as I can. Bucket list wise, people tell you to make your bucket list and go do it when you get this diagnosis. And I have found that most of my bucket list is my day-to-day life. So I'm very blessed. And my girls came with us to Fenway, all the kids and my wife. And I'd like for them to come to more shows. I'd like to, we've had a wonderful summer. We've spent a lot of time together. And right now they don't know the intensity of what the future may hold, but neither do I. So every ALS case is different. And, and we're just hoping for the best and preparing for the worst.
Well, as tough as that is to hear, this has been a fantastic conversation, Hop, and I can't thank you enough for taking the time to talk with me on the Rodcast. And I do hope that everybody listening will jump on board with Hop on the Cure. So thank you so much for being here today, and thanks for taking the time to talk with me.
Thank you, Sid. Good to see you.
Good to see you. All right, it is time for the Bourbon Break. And since we've just had that great conversation with Hop, let's keep things musical for the Bourbon Break. And while it might seem a natural connection to turn the Bourbon Break over to something a little more hop-infused like a beer for this break, I'm not going to do that. Instead, I want to take a taste or three of Blackened, that musical bourbon inspired by that iconic metal band Metallica. And yeah, I love Metallica. So I've been dying to try their bourbon because let's face it, there is nothing more American than heavy rock and a good bourbon. Now, I'll be pouring from a bottle from batch 117 today, so my review will be tendered with that batch in mind. Now, I love the story of Blackened. It's distilled by Sweet Amber Distilling Company and is a collaboration between Metallica and master distiller and blender Dave Pickerell. He's the guy who distilled and came up with the ideas for Whistle Pig. Now, sadly, we lost him in 2018. However, after Pickerel's passing, master distiller Rob Dietrich took up the helm with Blackened. Of course, Metallica is the global sensation heavy metal band that really has altered the music world. Formed in 1981 in LA by drummer Lars Ulrich and vocalist and guitarist James Hetfield, then adding lead guitarist Kirk Hammett and bassist Rob Trujillo, Metallica has been on top of the rock world for more than 3 decades. They have been honored with 9 Grammys and 23 nominations and over 125 million albums sold worldwide. And of course, it makes sense that Metallica would be involved in a whiskey because let's not forget that in 1998, Metallica released their album Garage Inc., which included a cover of that classic song, Whiskey in the Jar, which is a traditional Irish song, but it got popular when the Dubliners, you know, that 1960s Irish folk band, and then the Highwaymen recorded the song. But in 1973, that fantastic Irish rock band Thin Lizzy really popularized the song. And then in 2000, Metallica won a Grammy for their rendition. Hey, but let's not forget that Bryan Adams recorded a version in 2019 and Pulp recorded one in 1995. And Smokey recorded one in 1989. But we're focusing on Metallica here today and their heavy driving Whiskey in the Jar. Now, here's what makes Blackened so unique. Pickerel selected and blended several bourbons and ryes. He then took that blend and put it into black brandy casks for the final aging. And here's where it's really interesting. He then worked with Metallica to design a proprietary black sound subwoofer speaker system through which they blast the barrels with Metallica's music. The heavy sound waves moving the whiskey in the barrels, just as one would rotate the barrels in a final aging stage. But these are sound blasted to give the bourbon in the barrel its final turns in aging, where a lot of the flavor is achieved. Now, some might say this is just a gimmick, and others might say that the heavy agitation of the bourbon in the casks doesn't actually affect the aging or the flavoring. But whether gimmick or whether ineffectual or not, the fact of the matter is that what comes out of those casks and is poured into those bottles is pretty damn good. Now, unfortunately, what we don't get with Blackened is the mash bill for each batch, the distillery location, the length of aging, or any other information that might be relevant to understanding this whiskey. And I know several whiskey pros out there who will write this whiskey off simply because they get agitated with distillers for not sharing information. And I get that. But holy crap, don't write off a good thing just because they won't show you the recipe. I mean, hell, most great barbecuers keep their recipes secret, but we don't get all bent out of shape about that. We just order more Q. Now, Blackened is a 90 proof bourbon, and it lists for about $45 a bottle, which among other American blended whiskeys is reasonable and a worthy price point. I love the Blackened bottle. It's got a definitive look, and the label features a black waveform image of what I assume is some segment of a Metallica song. The sharp cut of the bottle, along with the black colors in the label, highlight the dark amber tones of the liquid inside. The bottle just screams a thumping metal visual. Printed on a black jersey, this label is a concert t-shirt. It's a darker color whiskey. In fact, to keep the metal theme, I'm going to say it looks like a dark copper or a smoky amber. But aside from the heavy, hard intonations implied by the label and the echo of Metallica's bass and guitar, Blackened is an incredibly smooth pour. Not smooth like jazz, but smooth like a leather biker's jacket. And what confuses me about Blackened is you'd think with the heavy metal affiliation that this would be a whiskey you'd want to get your fist around the neck of the bottle and just upend it, chugging it away as the bubbles gurgle back into the bottle. But it's not. It's smooth, not delicate, but a sturdy, sleek pour that's worth taking your time with. Now, the nose tells you this right away. It's sweet with a toasted dark brown sugar, oaky caramel vanilla scent that hints at a classic bourbon, but one that clearly has been blended with a rich rye. And even though it's only 90 proof, and I don't know why I anticipated a whiskey from Metallica to have been like a 666 proof whiskey that would burn your soul. But even though it's not a high proof whiskey, there's enough of a trace of alcohol burn in the nose that it reminds you that this is going to be a serious pour. The palate opens sweet and fruity, but those darker fruits like dark cherries, stewed apricots, dates, and apples. In fact, I'd have to say that in a lot of ways, Blackened opens like a classic, well-aged traditional bourbon. And as the palate develops, that fruit is accompanied by leather, not like chewing on cowhide leather, but the leather of that well-worn jacket, a comfort leather, like a big leather couch in front of a set of monster speakers pouring bass riffs and guitar licks through your chest. That is, somehow Blackened is simultaneously soft and deep. In fact, now that I think about it, back in September of 2019, Metallica played a concert with the San Francisco Orchestra in a kind of theater in the round performance. And that's the kind of deep and soft that this leather taste reminds me of. You should listen to that concert through a good set of headphones while trying Blackened. Then you'll get it. Those kettle drums and For Whom the Bell Tolls are life-changing. And when the crowd starts singing along, chills, just chills. Now, curiously, the Blackened wraps up with a unique saltiness, like the sea spray that's tinted with something plant-like, like maybe kelp or sargasso grass. I'll keep it nautical. But it's not as off-putting as it sounds. It's really nice and comforting. Of course, the reigning question about Blackened is whether or not the sonic sound blasting actually has any effect on the whiskey and the aging process. But whether it does or does not, what Pickerel and Metallica have created in this collaboration is an enjoyable, consistent, smooth whiskey. And given that these are unknown blends bottled by varying batching, that consistency is an impressive accomplishment. I know I'm going to be grabbing a few other bottles from other batches to see if that consistency maintains across batch numbers. So yeah, I am a fan of the Blackened. And those are my thoughts about the Blackened. Hey, but before we get back on the water, and as a final note and my regular disclaimer, as always, please keep in mind that the Fishing Professor Bourbon Break reviews are not sponsored. The distillers have not sent me samples, nor do they influence my reviews at all, though I am always open to sponsorship, bribery, and extortion. The bourbons I review here are purchased out of pocket, and my reviews are based on the keen sense of bourbon know-how I have developed over many years in many of this country's finest watering holes, drinking establishments, dives, pubs, honky-tonks, and back alley speakeasies. Hey, speaking of, since we're rocking here today, let me give a quick shout out to the High Dive here in Gainesville, Florida, where they have a moderate menu of bourbons, but bring some great music acts to the small stage. A fun venue to have a few whiskeys and listen to some good tunes. So here's to the women who love me terribly. May they soon improve. As always, if you have comments about this week's Bourbon Break, feel free to email me at sid@inventivefishing.com. And that's that. Let's get back to the cast. All right, it is time for this week's Top 10. And let me tell you that this week's Top 10 stinks. I mean, it really stinks. And that's because this week I'm counting down the Fishing Professor's Top 10 scent attractors. I'm covering the scent attractors that you put on your lures or dip your lures like soft bodies into or soak your lures in. So the sprays, the goos, the liquids, the oils. And yes, these are a messy aspect of your fishing, but adding scent can often be a great way to add another layer of attractant to your lure beyond visual and auditory stimulation. Oh, but I'm not going to take up that urban legend, or I guess more accurately, that maritime legend, that WD-40 is a great fish attractant when you spray it on your lures. The data is just not there, so I'm going to leave that one to you. So let's get to stinking. Okay, at number 10, I'm going to start unbranded with this list and simply say that my number 10 spot goes to Menhaden Oil. And I don't care whose Menhaden Oil it is. I'm just recommending Menhaden Oil, but in a specific context. Soaking your skirts for trolling for species like dolphin, wahoo, and tuna. This is unquestionably a messy process when it comes to rigging, but soak your rubber skirts in a jar of Menhaden Oil before rigging them over your strip baits, ballyhoo, or bonita for an added scent trail. Call it a pro tip if you want, but I know lots of anglers who don't soak their skirts. But I also know some who do, and every time I've fished with the ones that do, the bite just seems to be enhanced. Okay, at number 9, I'm going with Jack's Juice, which is really Menhaden Oil, but in an aerosol can, making it easier for spraying trolling baits rather than just soaking them. So check out Jack's Juice. At number 8, I've got Atlas Mike's Lunker Lotion. Now, one of the things that I like about Atlas Mike's Lunker Lotion is the sheer diversity in scents available for saltwater anglers. Atlas Mike's Lunker Lotion comes in sardine, anchovy, shrimp, herring, crayfish, sturgeon, alewife, shad, squid, salmon, trout, and steelhead, menhaden, sand shrimp, kokanee, halibut, tuna, krill, bloodworm, anise, anise and shrimp, and anise and herring, as well as freshwater scents. Wait, krill? What the hell are you trying to catch with krill scent? Moby Dick? Now, you may have noticed that I mentioned anise, which is a spice or a flavor that is identical to licorice. I first discovered anise as a scent attractor when I reviewed Logic Lures scented tandem lures, which are infused with anise. You can check out that review at inventiveFishing.com or on the Inventive Fishing YouTube channel. Now, prior to that, I had not heard of using anise as a fish attractor, but it certainly works. So I picked up a bottle of Atlas Mike's anise scent and found it to be pretty damn good. And okay, I'm going to cheat here a bit and call in a life hack for my number 7 position and tell you that as much as I learned that anise makes a great fish attractant, I figured why not just use anise extract when you can get the one that you can get in the spice section of any grocery store. And guess what? It works just fine. Just add a few drops to your lure, or I've even soaked my soft body lures in the anise extract to let them really cling to the scent. Be warned though, anise permeates, so whatever you store your lures in will smell like anise for a very long time. And that's okay if you like the licorice smell. Uno, dos, tres, cuatro, cinco, cinco, seis. Hey, at number 6, Fin Essence Liquid Fish Attractant, the Shredder Crab. Okay, I stumbled onto this one just in a tackle catalog somewhere, maybe Tackle Direct, but I'm not really sure. But a crab scent always gets my attention, particularly when fishing for redfish, black drum, and cobia, even though the Fin Essence label has a picture of a striper, which makes sense given a striper's voracious crab appetite, or its crabitite, as I'm now going to officially call it. Fin Essence blends oils and pheromones to create its attractant scent. This is a great scent, by the way, to drop a few drops into a plastic envelope. Your plastics come in, seal it back up, and let it sit for a day before using the lures. The plastics will soak up that scent and be ready to go. And again, I like the Shredder Crab here. And Fin Essence also comes in bunker, clam, and shrimp, but I've only used the Shredder Crab, so that's what's getting my nod at number 6. 555 goes to Liquid Mayhem Saltwater Series, which comes in squid, sardine, and anchovy. This is a great goo, and I love the packaging as it's more like toothpaste, a toothpaste tube that lets you easily squeeze the goo and control the amount you have coming out. It also clings really well to whatever you're scenting up. All the more reason not to brush your teeth with it, by the way. Liquid Mayhem, which reminds me of Electric Mayhem, one of the greatest bands of all times. I'm sure you all will agree. Liquid Mayhem contains natural baitfish enzymes infused with powerful amino acids and other bite stimulants that taste and smell natural. I will let you take the taste test to decide whether that's true or not, but I'm going to go with their press as accurate. Okay, at number 4, I'm going to go with Fish Sticks Lure Enhancer Saltwater Series. And since I mentioned Liquid Mayhem's toothpaste tube delivery system, I have to point out that one of the great things about Fish Sticks Lure Enhancer is that this is a solid base scent. It works like a stick of deodorant or some stick sunscreen. And dear God, do not confuse this with your deodorant like I did. Holy hell, I had cats following me for a week, and the date I had that night did not go well. Now, this stick approach is muy convenient and way less messy than goos or oils, even when the main ingredient is fish oil. It also tends to hold on to lures for a very long time, so you don't have to refresh as often as you do with some of the other scents I've mentioned. All right, coming in at number 3, we've got a Bang, B-A-N-G, Bass Assassin Bang Saltwater Formula Scents, that is. The folks at Bass Assassin and Saltwater Assassin have done an excellent job with this scent, and I gotta say that if I were doing a top 10 on nicest people in the recreational fishing industry, Robin and Teresa Shiver of Bass Assassin would basically be my top 5. Now, one of the things that I like about the Bang scents Bass Assassin sells is the option to get them in a spray bottle or an aerosol bottle. I also like their slow dispersion of the scent, letting it cling to the lure and slowly dissolve into the water. Okay, in the number 2 position, I have to go with Berkeley Gulp Alive Attractant, both the spray bottle application and the recharge version, which is designed to pour the scent into your Gulp Alive jars or envelopes, but works just as well pouring into containers of most other plastics and soft bodies I use as well. I've had solid luck with the crab, the herring, the shrimp, and the squid scents. And I've got a buddy who says when the going gets tough, tough go to Gulp. And I have to agree, Gulp is a great scent attractor. And that brings us to my number 1 fish scent. But before we take a big whiff of that number 1, here's a quick recap. Number 10, Menhaden Oil. Number 9, Jack's Juice. Number 8, Atlas Mike's Lunker Lotion. At 7 was my life hack with anise extract. At number 6, Fin Essence Liquid Fish Attractant, and I like the shredder crab version. At 5, Liquid Mayhem Squid Scent Saltwater Series. At 4, Fish Sticks Lure Enhancer Saltwater Series. At 3, Bass Assassin Bang Saltwater Formula Scents. At number 2, Berkeley Gulp Alive Attractant. Which brings us to the number 1 fish attractor scent, and you've probably already sniffed this one out unless you whiffed. The number 1 scent for saltwater fishing goes to Procure Super Gel in all of its glorious stinky varieties with the piquant perfume palette of, are you ready for this? I'm not sure I am, but here we go. The perfumed palette of Procure: anchovy, anise crawfish, anise krill, anise plus, bait fish formula, butt juice, mainly for habit, not for date night, fellas, herring, inshore saltwater formula, kokanee special, krill gel, minnow, pinfish, salmon egg, saltwater formula, sand shrimp, sardine, shad, shrimp, shrimp krill, smelt, squid. And that doesn't even begin to account for all of Procure's freshwater scents too. So no question, Procure is my number 1 fish attractant scent. I usually have a couple of scent versions with me when I'm fishing. I am particularly fond of the pinfish, shrimp, and crab when fishing inshore, and I'm a sucker for the crab scent when fishing for black drum without a question. So that's my thoughts on my top 10 scent attractors for fishing, particularly saltwater fishing, I guess. And as always, if you'd like a Fishing Professor Top 10 about a particular fishing-related thing, just send me an email and I'll see about adding it to my list for future Top 10s. So that wraps up another Fishing Professor's Weekly Top 10. I hope you liked that one. And so like Will Smith and Bart Simpson say, smell you later. Well, we have sung it out today. But it's time to put the mic in the stand and the rod in the rack because this ends another set of the Fishing Professor Rodcast. Hey, I want to thank John Driskell Hopkins of the Zac Brown Band for taking the time to talk fishing and music with us today. And I also urge all of the listening crew to check out his foundation, Hop on a Cure, and give what you can to support research for finding a cure for ALS. Of course, I hope you enjoyed the rockin' review of Blackened and that you find a big old leather couch, a good set of speakers, and give Blackened a pour while listening to some thumping Metallica music. I, for one, think that I'd like to age like Blackened, having my innards churned over time by Metallica's sonic sounds. I do hope, too, that my top 10 scent additives smelled all right to you. Before I sign off today, I do have a message for our brothers and sisters out there behind the line. The captain is in the wheelhouse. I say again, the captain is in the wheelhouse. And that just about does it for this week's episode of the Fishing Professor Rodcast. Be sure to look for next week's episode, which will drop on Wednesday of next week. And I hope you share the glory and tell everyone else about the Fishing Professor Rodcast. And of course, if you have a comment or question about anything on this week's show or have recommendations for future Top 10s, Bourbon Breaks interviews, or information about specific fishing-related issues, please feel free to email me at sid@inventivefishing.com or leave a reply in any of the comment sections for any of the podcast platforms you use to listen to the Rodcast. Hey, be sure to follow Inventive Fishing on Twitter, Instagram, and friend us on Facebook at Inventive Fishing, and be sure to check out all the great video content over on the Inventive Fishing YouTube channel, which includes gear reviews, new product introductions, and all kinds of other fantastic fishing footage. I'll be back next week with another episode. Until then, this is Sid Dobrin, the Fishing Professor. Fish on.
The Fishing Professor Show is copyrighted by Inventive Fishing, LLC. Any rebroadcast of the podcast without the consent from Inventive Fishing, LLC is strictly prohibited. Fish on!